Times Square. It's not really a square. It's more like two triangles where 7th Avenue and Broadway meet. Times Square is located in Manhattan, which is located in New York City. So what's the story with these two triangles? And what can you see in Times Square these days? Our story begins way back to over 200 and some years ago. The state commission said, yo, let's slice up the land above Houston Street into boxes, because boxes are cool. Some people were horrified at this. Edgar Allan Poe even said, woe is we are doomed, we are killing the romance, or something to that effect. But boxes proved to be cool after all, because cutting cities into boxes became popular. Other cities around the world copied this pattern as well. But in New York, they made an exception to the boxes. The Bloomingdale Road, because it's a pretty broad road. Some might say it's a pretty broad way. I hope you get where I'm going with this. Eventually, Bloomingdale Road became known as Broadway. And because of the diagonal path of Broadway, it created two triangles via its intersection with 7th Avenue. Further in time, since this intersection became such a hub, it eventually became the center of the horse business. Think blacksmiths, carriage makers, and everyone and everything that involves horses. So they named this area Long Acre Square, because London had a carriage district too that was named Long Acre Square, so why not name it the same? Then, this area started to look drab and dingy. People started considering it to be part of the Tenderloin district. Yes, after the meat. Story has it, the place was so rough that businesses would bribe the police to get some protection. It's said that a police officer named Captain Alexander Clubber Williams said, I've been having chuck steak ever since I've been on the force, and now I'm going to have a bit of tenderloin. But there was an announcement. The IRT, an underground subway line, was going to be built and will pass through Long Acre Square. This started some real estate speculation. Businesses started moving into the area. Businesses like the Empire Theater moved in, which was the first theater to have electricity. At this point, we should note that something was happening with the newspapers. There was a rivalry going on. The New York World built a building so tall that it was the tallest in the world for about 4 years. The New York Herald also built a building. To this day, the area around it is called Herald Square. Then you have New York Times, who didn't want to be left behind. Speculating on the announcement of the underground subway that was coming soon to Long Acre Square, it purchased a hotel right here, which they demolished to build Times Tower. So the underground subway opened up, and the subway actually ran through the basement of Times Tower. As everything in this world needs a name, they would need to name the subway stop. Would they name it 42nd Street? Or perhaps Broadway? Or maybe even Long Acre Square? Of course, this would be a boring story without some intrigue. You see, Adolph Ochs owned the New York Times at the time. It was rumored that he rubbed elbows with the mayor, George McClellan Jr., and the founder of the subway system, August Belmont Jr. To this day, we call this area intersecting Broadway and 7th Avenue as Times Square. To celebrate the new headquarters, the Times hosted a New Year's party in Times Square. But the Times wanted something even more spectacular. So they came up with the time ball being dropped at midnight, which they made into a tradition every year. Even when the Times moved out of Times Square to another building, the tradition of the ball drop at Times Square remained. And more theaters from downtown kept moving into Times Square, along with restaurants, hotels, and other businesses. Eventually, all transport lines, subways, buses, and elevated rails all stopped at Times Square. Times Square was attracting more producers and other theater professionals. People figured out that a hit show has the potential to make $1 million in 1 year, which was the cost to build a theater at the time. At the time, there was a total of 80 theaters open for business. Then, to make Times Square even more compelling, in comes the Zipper. This was a continuous electric news sign that delivered breaking news and events. It attracted a lot of people to Times Square. Live theaters and cinemas also made large signs and marquees that brightened up the area. But oh no, here comes the Great Depression. The struggle is real. Theaters needed to make money, so they became a place for adult entertainment. In came the burlesque shows and other cheap entertainment. Then came World War II. Times Square continued to be a place for cheap entertainment for adults, in that it also became a popular place to visit among the soldiers. To the dismay of the area, and because of the war, there was a construction and light restriction. So buildings were getting dilapidated, and for the first time since the tradition started, there was no ball drop on New Year's Eve. But when the war ended, there was a huge celebration in Times Square, and the tradition of the ball drop continued. Then in came the 60s with its age of libertarianism. All the adult entertainment offered at Times Square boomed even more. Of course, this brought along felony and crime. If you think it couldn't get any worse, drugs made its arrival. But despite all this dark and dingy history, Times Square still remained both a symbol and a central transit hub. People were still determined to revitalize Times Square. There was even a plan for it. Of course, revitalization didn't happen overnight, because the adult entertainment industry was very profitable. And when something is profitable, it's hard to shut down. Plus, there was a lot of lawsuits against the plan. But eventually, all the lawsuits were figured out, and another plan came out. And this was when things started to look bright for Times Square. Literally and figuratively. Street art and bright lights were encouraged. In fact, there was even a minimum brightness level for the lights to make sure Times Square was bold and bright. Theaters fixed themselves up, and even Disney came in to help fix up one of the theaters. With the theaters being fixed, the installation of bright lights, and a group helping keep the area safe and improve development, more businesses moved in. So today, we have the mad, chaotic, magical Times Square. So what's there to see in Times Square? Well, first and foremost, remember that Times Square sits on the historic road called Broadway. It is more than just two triangles in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. It is two triangles within the theater district. There are 41 Broadway theaters in New York. 40 of them are located within the theater district. This map is available to all patrons on my Patreon. Link is in the description below. We are not going to name all the Broadway theaters, but here are some notable ones. Belasco Theater. Legend has it that it was haunted by its early owner, David Belasco, up until it staged a performance of O Calcutta that featured both male and female nudity. Ever since the premiere of the production, there was no longer any reports of David Belasco's ghost. The three oldest theaters are the Lyceum, the Hudson, and New Amsterdam. New Amsterdam Theater was renovated by the help of Disney and opened with The Lion King, which is still in production today. And we can't forget the namesake of the area, the Times Tower, or officially One Times Square. It's not that recognizable anymore from its original facade because of all the billboards and lights that were added in the 90s. But you can recognize it by the ball at the top and the current year. Then you have the statue of George M. Cohan. You might know him better by his song, Give My Regards to Broadway. At the far north is the statue of Father Duffy. He's recognized because his parish served the area of Hell's Kitchen and Times Square back in their dark slum days. His statue faces the side of his former church. Right next to these two statues is a tickets booth where you can get same-day tickets for theater performances. Ticket prices will be anywhere from 20 to 50% off. And hopefully the tickets booth will open as Broadway opens up. What would be a portion of the road that is Broadway is dedicated for pedestrians between 42nd and 47th Streets. Here you will find tables and chairs to hang out at. There are plenty of street performers, vendors, and a menagerie of people trying to get money from you. I'm not going to lie, Times Square is a tourist trap, but it's still worth seeing. Surrounding the area of Times Square are large retailers and billboards galore. I recommend going, hanging out, and just taking in the chaos and mayhem of what some refer to as the Crossroads of the world. And that's Times Square. Thank you so much for watching. Videos like these are made possible through your engagement. And engagement comes in the form of subscribing, liking, and commenting on this video. These things really do help the performance of the channel, and it only takes a few seconds to hit that like button, subscribe, and notification bell. Hitting the notification bell notifies you whenever I upload a new video. So with that, thank you again for watching, and happy New Yorking.